evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming. This is a very exciting evening for myself and also for the Stecklesses and a lot of people here who contributed to the film. Tonight we are going to see sequences from a documentary in progress called Rough and Tumble, Taking Play Seriously. The documentary will be about 30 minutes, but we're just seeing about 15 minutes worth of work tonight. The film was funded by the Compliment Center and to support interdisciplinary work, and the film brought together scientists, artists, psychologists, and we hope that the film will appeal to and have relevance to people doing play research across disciplines, but also to people who love to play. What a great place to be able to talk about the value of play here at the playground. So I first got interested in play in terms of animals is after I got a dog. So I invited this little puppy into my house and had no idea what a big personality he would have, and he would have specific likes and dislikes. And it really started to make me observe him more, his behaviors, and also question, what could he understand? What kind of intelligence did he have? And this led me to going on a dolphin research boat for 2 weeks and filming dolphins. And one thing that I did observe, to me it seemed to me that many of the dolphins like to play with the swimmers, especially the good swimmers. I was not a good swimmer, so they didn't play much with me, but the swimmers, those who were quite good, it really seemed like there was a lot of interactions going on that were quite fascinating. One of the other areas that developed for me is just thinking about the emotional intelligence. What kind of consciousness do these animals have? And I read up on Dieter and Netzine's research. They're doing gorilla play research, and we began to collaborate. After some starts and stops, we developed the project on play. One thing that they tell you in film school is never make a film that has animals or kids in it. This one has both. And what I learned is that, as a scientist, you have to be very patient. You have to observe closely, because often we really miss things. We don't see things, the kind of signals that animals are giving each other. So it's really, I think in the profession really where observation is important, very keen. And being able to actually document some of the play behaviors is challenging, because animals, of course, are not going to always do what you want. And so the gorilla footage, for instance, much of it was shot by the Stecklesses' sons over the past 2 summers, but some of the footage is older, as old as 20 years old, to show specific behaviors, which they will talk about more. I guess one of the joys of making the film was really just being able to watch both kids and animals play. So the film features dogs, gorillas, and dolphins. And one of the joys of getting a dog was sort of starting to meet other dog owners and visit the local Tucson dog park. So we'll see some footage from some of the local dog parks also. One of the special things that we have tonight is coincidental, but we have one of the leading play specialists here among us, Dr. Pansep. He's a neurobiologist, and some of you may know him because he discovered that if you tickle rats, they will laugh. And Yak is over there. Yak, you want to raise your hand? So I'm hoping that we'll get to hear a little bit from Yak about laughing rats. So how we're going to do this is we'll be watching clips, and in between the Steckleses will be discussing their research. So they're in the film, some of the subjects in the film, and then they'll be sort of expanding on the clips that we're seeing that are broken down in 6 different clips. But before I hand it off to them, there are a lot of people I would like to thank. In particular, of course, the Confluence Center, Dr. Javier Duran, Heather, whose birthday it is tonight. She's operating the media back there. And Yvonne Irwin and all the rest from the Confluence Center. I also want to thank some of the people who crewed. Jeff Smith is the videographer down here for a lot of the film, and we have other people in attendance, some of my students, Jacob Deseo, Jacob, assistant editor, Dina Kagan, editor, I think over there somewhere. We have Rafael Gomez, who helped do camera, and Naim Amor, he generously supplied some music for this tonight. And hopefully I haven't forgotten anyone. I don't know if Julie Etheridge is here. She helped with the sound. So I hope you enjoy the presentation tonight, and come talk to me afterwards about the project. We're still finishing up, and the one difficult thing about documentary filmmaking is it's hard to know when to stop, when you stop shooting, just to finish the project. Okay, so I'm now going to hand it over. I think we'll first play our first clip. Yep.
Want to know what the study of non-human animals has to do with human behavior. And play is a perfect example to look at. We're animals, and we evolved from other animals. So if you can find patterns that are similar in other animals, you have a good feeling for maybe the roots of moral behavior, the roots of fair play.
Is play just a byproduct of youth exuberance? Does it serve a function? And we can look across different animal species other than humans, right? And see, is play ubiquitous? Is it just everywhere?
Well, wow. Okay, I'm going to keep this at a distance. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming out tonight to join us to play a little bit. One of the things that you saw, I think, in that sequence just now is that watching animals play, and certainly watching these giant gorillas play, has a contagious quality to it. I think you saw that big grin on Netzine's face as she was watching those youngsters play, and it is contagious. You want to just jump right in, and because it sort of engages the same emotions, we believe, that they feel, that pleasurable, relaxed feeling. And that's in fact one way in which we can recognize play, because it clearly seems to be pleasurable The animals are in a kind of a relaxed state. I think that this is something that first intrigued us when we started watching mountain gorillas. My goodness, I won't even say how many years ago.
How many years ago?
I won't, because it'll give away your age for sure. A long time ago, but we were watching these giant silverback males during rest sessions, which is usually in the middle of the day, being woken up, what seemed to be quite rudely, by a youngster, a little infant sometimes, or a very young juvenile, who then wants to engage this big hulking silverback, 400-pound silverback in play. And they start playing, they start wrestling and rolling around.
And laughing. And this is unusual because if you think about it, is this not on? It's unusual because, first of all, play among animals, especially adults, is quite rare. But then when you think about a 400-pound silverback who eats salad all day long, it's going to be kind of costly to spend his energy on rolling around and wrestling with youngsters. So it got us thinking, well then, if there's a cost, there certainly is an energetic cost to this, what is the benefit? Now, at that time, we were doing other things. We weren't researching play. We just observed this. We were trying to conserve the last of these mountain gorillas. There's about 800 left in the world, and they all live here. And we were in the middle of a war and a genocide. So we were concerned with other things. But recently, we started turning to this question because there wasn't an answer. And that's when Yuri found us. And so thank you, Yuri, for taking us on this adventure. But still this question about, well, why are they playing? Is it important? Is it just a byproduct? And how do we investigate that?
What's also surprising in some ways is that people have been studying mountain gorillas, beginning with particularly Dian Fossey in the late 1960s. So for a long time, but nobody had actually looked at play, even though play consumes a fairly large amount of their daily time, their budget, you might say. So it's surprising that nobody had looked at that. So we thought, wow, this is really something to investigate, but especially to look at this play between older individuals, particularly these large silverback males and these young infants. That's really quite remarkable, because when you look across species, you really don't see that very often, that adults. I mean, you do it in a few species. Jaak will tell you that mom rats will play with their pups, for sure. But generally speaking, in the primate world, the adults sort of, other than ourselves, of course, don't really play very much once they get to be adults, or don't play with their infants, for sure.
So that poses the question, what is the function of this play? So I think we can go to the next.
Let's watch some more.
In primates in particular, where brain growth is delayed to after birth, this kind of activity, we have reason to think, enhances brain growth. It actually is a part of brain maturation.
Dogs play for a number of reasons. There's four major reasons. The first is social development and socialization. It's also important for physical activity. It builds muscles, tendons, joints, and bones, just like in human beings. Cognitive development. They might learn how high a rock they can jump off of and be safe.
watching gorilla play, what's interesting is that a lot of the behaviors also happen during non-play kinds of interactions. You might see wrestling, this rough and tumble play. You might see that during an actual aggressive encounter, but what makes all of this different is the fact that it's all relaxed. It's all appearing to be great fun.
With dolphins, every time I'm with them, they play with me. I've seen dolphins tease each other underwater and feint something, come speeding toward you at the last minute, speed off. That's hilarious. That's one of their favorite games. And they also come, if they trust you, float belly up, which for any cetacean to float belly up on the blowhole is really a vulnerable position underwater. Is a sign that you are in kind of general area. And sometimes they come and floated within about 7 or 8 inches below me, belly to my belly.
So you probably noticed, particularly in the dog video, which was quite cleverly done. It was a dog cam, right? You're probably wondering how the photographer got so low to get all the shots. Well, it was from the dog's view. Anyway, but we have reason to think that play surely must have some functions. That is to say, animals are spending a lot of time doing it, a good deal of their early development in particular, a lot of energy. Often they expose themselves to dangers when they do it. They can sustain injuries doing it. So there likely is a function. It's, it appears very frivolous, but it's actually, in that sense, kind of serious. It must serve a purpose. The question is, what are the functions of play? It's not so easy, it turns out. And partly because the functions may be very different for different kinds of animals. Now for us, knowing that, like other species who play, there are specific sort of communicative gestures, as you saw with the dogs, that signal play, that signal the intent to play, like a crouching down, for example, right? So play is about to happen. There's a kind of specialization, you might say, to play that makes it interesting right off the bat, and also tells you that it's probably functionally important. So for us, with the gorillas, we were thinking, well, if you have these large silverbacks or other big adults playing with little guys, what function could that have? That's kind of interesting, and perhaps, as we said, somewhat unusual.
And as you saw in the video clip, there could be several different functions and multiple functions happening at once, so certainly the physical development makes sense. You saw the youngsters playing with each other, and they learn how to wrestle, they learn coordination. They learn how to get out of trees, falling not too badly, hopefully. And there's also cognitive development. But one of the other things that we're starting to learn is that play also has these other functions, including learning social skills and learning how to regulate one's emotions. And so this play among peers has all these great functions, again, these physical and cognitive development, but we're particularly interested in the potential function of learning how to regulate one's emotions by playing with a partner that's much bigger, much stronger, and kind of quote-unquote dangerous, a little scary. Have you ever seen human fathers throw their children up in the air? That's play. Isn't that a little bit scary? Yeah, a little bit, especially for
scary
moms.
for moms and the babies,
right?
right?
Or how about the rough and tumble play, where they're really wrestling and maybe it hurts a little bit, and there's some uncertainty. Those are forms of play that we now know can help with emotional regulation. You learn how to pull your punches, how to control that excitement, and that perhaps a little bit of aggression. You learn how to control your emotions. And that is critical for folks like us. We're highly social. And so are gorillas, so are dogs. Those things that are highly social, that need to learn how to get along with other beings, it's very advantageous to learn emotional regulation.
And we're not the first to point this out. We're not the originators, you might say, of that idea. Many other researchers who study play have in fact suggested that it could be preparation for what they call the unexpected. And that's quite important to a lot of animals, right? Because stuff happens. The unexpected stuff happens. And so preparing for the unexpected means that you want to challenge yourself or be challenged, sometimes beyond what you think are your limits. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about here in terms of regulating your emotions so that you don't over-respond or under-respond. You kind of get it right as a parent.
So next we're going to look at a sequence that, well, then asks the question, well, then what happens when children or animals don't play? What could be the consequence of not playing?
I was trying to figure out some grand theory about the evolution and development of play, and I came up with this concept called law of justice, which basically argues that play is very important to moral development. Animals learn what's right and what's wrong. And over the years, the data are supporting the fact that play is important, and that would be part of the socialization process. We're learning that it's during play that these sort of moral sentiments and moral capacities develop. And we're learning that across species. The animals who don't play a lot don't bond with littermates, for example, with their families, and they tend to leave their group, and they tend to suffer higher mortality. The same thing happens with animals who don't play fair.
When animals play with each other, they practice social skills. Just like with human children, we have reason to believe that they also learn lots of social rules during play.
Humans who don't learn to engage in spontaneous peer play, for example, often grow up to be sociopaths. And one of the common characteristics of these sociopaths, when you ask their teachers, their parents, their siblings, their peers, is that a particular individual did not know how to play. They couldn't read play signals, they didn't know how to invite other individuals to play. They weren't socialized.
So you have these antisocial kids, these pathological kids who can't distinguish aggression from rough and tumble play, for example. These kids need close adult supervision and close adult scrutiny. But for normal kids, I think all you want to do is get out of the way.
Now, one of the things we should mention too is that this form of play that we call rough and tumble play is the most frequent form of play that you find amongst primates and probably most mammals that play. And that's precisely the kind of thing that we often get quite nervous about, especially if it happens in a playground, right? Because we think, because it has this wrestling, roughhousing quality to it, that it can easily spill over into real aggression. And of course, sometimes it can, even when we're watching play sequences amongst gorillas, it can. But it's apparently really the most important, functionally the most important form of play, because it is so vigorous and is likely, as we were saying, to calibrate the emotionality of the animal, and because it happens early in their development, that's a good time for this emotional calibration to occur.
And it's also worth pointing out that this kind of play, this rough and tumble play, this spontaneous play, is different than games. So games that we might take our children to for a play date, where it's very structured, where there's rules, where there might even be a referee, or it might be a video game. These are not the same type of exercise. That is not play. Those are games. And you don't derive those kind of benefits of learning the social skills to know when I'm getting too rough, when this is getting a little too scary, or when I kick you, you know that I'm really just playing. We start picking up all those signals. Or that little baby gorilla chest beating. Chest beating can be very aggressive in gorillas. You want to get out of the way. Did that guy look aggressive? Did you know he was playing? Yes, you picked up on those signals. That was him inviting you to play. So it's important to just make that distinction that we worry too sometimes about all the structured games that are provided on the playground and calling it play.
So let's watch another sequence.
And here are two examples of where we see play with fathers and offspring in primates.
Dads play a central role in terms of rearing of the youngs. We're hoping that one of the things that will come out of our research is that there will be more research directed at what the actual consequences are of this kind of dad play with their own kids.
Oh, he tosses that guy aside. When you get the spin and the attack.
Yeah. A little slapping, but not too hard. Right?
Biting.
Yeah. The shoulder is a particularly good target for biting, so the silverback is biting him on the shoulder there.
The dominant silverback, he's huge. He's carefully handling this infant and playing with him and grooming him.
So what you saw there was partly a scene from a course we teach here at the university on the main campus on fathering. And we think that some of this play that happens between the silverbacks and the kids may be a form of fathering in the same way that you might play with your children, your dad. Of course, human dads are pretty renowned for doing that. We standardly do that. But again, in the animal world, that's very uncommon. It's extremely rare. So that makes gorillas really interesting, the fact that they show that kind of fathering, playing with these little tykes. So that, again, brings us back to what's the function of this. We know from other work that has been done with gorillas that these silverbacks, when they're playing with these little guys, in fact, those are their kids. We have DNA work, DNA results to show that. So they're making an investment in their children in the same way that human dads do when they play with their kids. So again, it underscores the importance of this particular paternal behavior, you might say, fathering behavior in the form of play.
You know, another reason why it's really interesting to do this with mountain gorillas is that we have this long history, starting with Diane Fossey in 1967, of watching these individuals every day. We know when they were born, to whom, when they matured, when they had their first offspring, when they first mated, kind of when they started dating, all those things. We know about all these animals, all right? That's so unusual. That is an amazing database. And Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund continues the investment in protecting these gorillas and also maintaining that database. So we have this unique opportunity. Gorillas, unlike many mammals, have fathers that play with their offspring, like us, and we have their whole life history. So what is the consequence of this play on the outcomes for their offspring? And that's what our research is about, and that's the kind of question that we're attempting to tackle. And we can only do that in this particular population.
So when gorillas are dating, do they take each other to the salad bar? Okay, that's enough. Well, you mentioned they eat salad, so.
Now I need more than water to drink. Okay. Just saying, I'm just saying.
It's coming, it's coming. All right, shall we go on? Show a little bit more?
So there are a couple of implications, potential implications of our work with gorilla play. One is that it sheds light, or it can shed light, on the central importance of play in young children. When I think about the nervousness that a lot of schools have, for example, about kids playing in the schoolyard, for example, because they're worried about bullying, obviously, they're worried about it turning into aggression, and so there seems to be a too ready a response to disallow those kinds of interactions. And there ought to be a way to say, look, this is play, and this is important play. There's some slapping and wrestling and stuff going on, this roughhousing going on, but an actually important socializing function for these kids. And again, speaking to some of this emotional regulation, it's good practice, and may even promote brain growth.
So many children now are not outside enough playing, that they're noticing depression, obesity, health problems, and what we lose as a species is an adaptability and an ability to use our imaginations, engage with the natural world.
The group Play Wales has a wonderful slogan, and the slogan is better a broken bone than a broken spirit. And we don't realize how when we don't allow kids to play, we break their spirit.
Well, number one, we're recognizing that rough and tumble play is different from aggression. Parents can encourage kids to play by giving them supportive environments to play. Some of these places have these play dates, but it's regimented. You know, play with balls in certain ways, sing songs in certain ways. That's not play. Those are games. The benefit of play is that kids figure out how to interact with each other on their own terms, with minimal adult intervention.
So we'll just make a quick comment here about some of the things that we're able to do in terms of our own research because of this long database that we have, courtesy of the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International. And that is, we can actually look back in time and look at animals, silverbacks, youngsters, say 30 or 40 years ago, to see how much play they engaged in, who they played with, and then see now, as they're fully adult, and some of them have passed on, to see what consequences that had for a range of social skills. Did it make a difference in terms of, say, whether they became particularly dominant in a group, or whether they had a particular mating success, mated with a lot of females and left a lot of progeny. Things of that sort we can answer, and it's very difficult to answer those kinds of questions, those long-term kinds of questions, unless you have this amazing long-term database, which we're very lucky to have.
Also, it helps us highlight that fathers can play these different roles in their children's lives. One is indeed bringing home the resources, bringing home the bacon, providing a home, providing security, providing college tuition, you know, those kinds of things. That's a significant form of paternal investment. It's indirect care. But now we're seeing that there's really something to be said for the direct care, the involvement, the playing with your children in this roughhousing on the, you know, the family room floor or on the trampoline. That this is also significant, and that we shouldn't focus so much on providing payments for your children, but perhaps being involved in this very active physical way. Right?
So there's a role for us men after all. We're not completely disposable, as some people are arguing these days. There are books titled, coming out titled, such as The End of Men, and a lot of our poor college freshmen that are in our course are trembling in their shoes, thinking that they have no future on this planet. But I think we're putting some new light on this. I think we do have some important roles to play.
Fathers are not just sperm donors. Okay, good news. Okay.
Well, let's go on to the next segment. I think this is the last one.
As we have a closer understanding of animals having these richer inner lives or mental lives, more similar to our own than we thought perhaps, I think it does raise interesting ethical implications about how we should treat them. Because I think we used to perhaps historically think of them more as perhaps these machines that, showed fairly complex behaviors, but they didn't have the kind of subjective, rich inner mental lives that we have. We always felt perhaps that that was a uniquely human experience. Even rats, from some of the experiments by the neurobiologist Jan Hoxha, seem to laugh. They seem to come back for more, being tickled. It's fascinating because it suggests that we're wired similarly, and so we might have similar interior lives, similar experiences.
We knew they were smart. Now we know they're emotional. And now we know they have moral sentiments. So the whole package demands that we are more respectful of these animals and that we offer them the respect and dignity that they deserve.
Our interest in animals comes from the fact that we have been observing them closely now within our family and seeing them as social beings that do have emotions, that have interesting, subtle behavior, that grow and develop similarly to our children. And I think that's brought on a new appreciation, understanding, and even curiosity and attention to animals in general.
It's evolved over the years. When our children were younger, there was a good amount of play wrestling, rough and tumble play, as we would say, on the trampolines, for example. I remember long sessions doing that, wrestling with them.
I just love being out in the woods on an autumn day with the smell of the rotting leaves. You say, what kind of lunatic is this? But I just love it. It's just spectacular.
When I was turning, I think, 40, my best friend made a cake. And on it she put, with great icing, a beautiful dolphin. And she put the phrase, I play, therefore I am. Which is the greatest compliment anyone could give me.
Sometimes when I think, oh, I have so much work to do, I shouldn't go play, which for me is riding my bike or hiking. But I don't get anything more done if I go ride a couple of 100 miles or if I just sit home and don't do it. And I wish people would incorporate that. It's not only the exercise, it's the spirituality, it's the spontaneity of play. It's the lightness. It's like you can just laugh at yourself and not take yourself so seriously. So I think work hard, rest hard, play hard is a good predictor of having a good life.
Rest hard, play hard at the playground. So we're opening it up to questions, and we're also, we'd like your suggestions because we'd like the final product, this documentary, to be used as an educational resource. Certainly we're going to use it in our class. That is going online, by the way, if anyone wants to take a class on fathering, it goes online. Anyone can take it this summer. Certainly we'll use it in our field school. We have field school students back there. Yes, you can come to Rwanda and we study play out there as well. But are there other venues, other places that we can use this message and this documentary to really to get the word out that play is significant, important in humans, in animals, and between humans and animals? Questions?
Thank you. We have time for questions.
Yeah, hi, thank you. How long did it take before you could get that close to those silverback gorillas and they didn't, feel threatened or attacked?
Good question. You're right. A wild silverback gorilla would not let you get that close. They are big for a reason. They are fighting machines, and they can kill you easily. But these have been habituated since 1967. And you couldn't get that close because they don't know you. But they know me. How do they know me? Because someone that they trust introduced me. And that line has continued since Diane Fossey. So they're habituated, but they're habituated to people that they trust, and then you may be introduced. So yeah, good question. But it takes, to habituate a wild gorilla, you're talking a year. To habituate a group in vested conditions, yeah.
More questions?
Hi, thanks so much for showing this for us. I apologize, this is too technical a question, but obviously a major challenge is to distinguish this play behavior, even from tumble play, from aggression, even ritualized aggression. And they're both functionally and I guess structurally different. So my question is, does rough and tumble play as well as actual ritualized aggression contribute to the establishment of a dominance hierarchy or a pecking order? Does it function in the same way?
So do they learn dominance position through play?
As well as through
aggression? Yes, they do. That they start that exercise during play. So you do start see, and that's why it can evolve into real aggression and then pulled back. But that's why you also see that on the playground. You establish dominance hierarchies on the playground with children who play, right?
Well, yeah, but you probably know this, Zach, but you know, gorillas, when they're playing, also give out signals that we humans give out, namely they laugh. That's the right. That's good, that's enough. Yeah, so, right, so you know they're playing. When that disappears and things tense up, then you're grading into something else, perhaps.
This whole thing is terrific. The research on play has to go into neuroscience, hopefully at the University of Arizona, because if we understand play at the neuroscience level, we have the possibility of working out the molecules for social joy. And guess who is lacking social joy? Depressed people. As a matter of fact, in our laboratory, we pursued that using microarrays and all the fancy technology. And we have a molecule that's in human testing right now as an antidepressant. And it passed the first phase, the proof of concept phase, very well. And it was the rats worked on play. We were looking for a molecule that increased rat laughter. Chirping when you tickle them, and this molecule that increased chirping is now in human testing. We are brothers and sisters under the skin, under the fur. Yes, my wife. Under the fur. I'm in a veterinary college right now. I know we have learned more about the human body by studying animals than any other creatures. It will be the same in psychiatry someday. And the question I wanted to ask was one I've been very interested in. I wonder whether our epidemic of ADHD is our cultural tendency, the most playful country in the world, eliminating play from our children. God awful, God awful. Would you reflect on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. But I'm wondering if the molecule you're talking about is a version of chocolate. Is that possible? Just kidding. No, I love the idea, of course, of going into neuroscience, we have potential collaborators even in this audience here, maybe we can interest them. But in terms of the ADHD, it would be pure speculation on our part, but I think it's a compelling idea, especially since in schools generally they have reduced the amount of recess time in favor of being in the classroom, basically, and, as we were saying before, this idea that, well, when you're in the playground, you're looking to have more structured kinds of play, what Pellegrini calls games, and that really has a very different kind of functionality altogether. So I think it's a very compelling idea, you know.
Let me just supplement that. We have tested a series of drugs that we give our children for play, for ADHD, sorry, for play too. They play too much. Every molecule that we give our kids for ADHD dramatically reduces play in rats. It's a shocker. We thought psychostimulants would elevate play. No way. They dramatically reduce play. We went to lower and lower doses. We never found a dose that elevated play. Because the psychostimulants facilitate cortical activity, and too much cortical activity suppresses emotionality.
Interesting, and sadly, we are the most playful species, and we are suppressing it the most. That disconnect is going to have an impact.
So play has a really big role in the education of social systems in a way in animals, as it's demonstrated through this documentary. With the decrease of play, with the increase of games, whether they be games like soccer or video games at home, do you believe that there's going to be some sort of relation to an increase in violence due to a lack of social interactions that are necessary for the actual development of the human being?
I think the critical piece of that puzzle is whether they get training in emotional regulation in any other way. Because that violence can be attributed to a lack of regulation, lack of emotional regulation, getting angry and not being able to pull your punches, right? So my question in reverse would be, are there other ways to train for emotional regulation? And therefore you may not have a clear connection, but I don't know another way. Do you think that video games help you train in emotional regulation? Possibly. It's a good research question. Sittler, let's do it.
Hello. Excellent talk. My question is that whether there is any way to quantify the good play. For example, my hypothesis is that for the good activity, if heart rate goes to 20% higher than baseline, this is a good activity. I'm just wondering that whether we can do some measurements to say that, okay, this is a good play, this is not play, just game.
Yeah, I'm out of my league on that one. Maybe after a couple of drinks I have an answer for that. It's a good question, but I'd have to think about it a little bit, other than just BS on my part.
We could speculate. We could look for certain behaviors that are indicators of real super engaged play. You know, like let's say in a gorilla, when you see a little, a youngster who starts doing the chest beat, you can sense, and we would have to test that, that's really engaged play. He's really into it, as opposed to just rolling around and lolling about. So maybe we can use a behavioral indicator that will tell us they're getting. I like that because I know there's so many benefits of reaching a certain heart rate for play in dogs and humans, right, and other animals, that then has all these positive consequences. I like the idea of some indicator that we can use. A behavioral indicator would be ideal, right? I like that.
Hey, why do you think our culture and our educational system has gone away from allowing children to have this kind of play? Why are they cutting down on recess time? Or why are we keeping our kids indoors? You know, what's happened to our culture, and when did it start happening?
I think we're losing track of the functionality of it. You know, I think it's not been highlighted sufficiently, but I think that's part of it. We're concentrating on a lot of other activities, school activities, gaming of sorts, but we've lost track of the critical functionality of this piece of development. And I think it needs to be highlighted, and of course that's partly what we ought to be doing. That's what this is about. Just kind of bring it back into the picture.
I think we are so focused on investing in our children, right? We buy them all the smart toys, we take them to tutors, we take them to play dates. We are a society that is a slow life history, right? And really heavily invested in our children. I don't think we realize that that is a great investment in our children.
And there's a question for Yuri. So how difficult is to film these creatures, these playful animals, and tell us about a little bit of the experience from the camera side.
Very good. Well, I didn't film all of the animals. So the gorillas, of course, were filmed by other people, and unfortunately, I didn't make it to Rwanda, but not yet. And you know, I introduced dogs into this project because, of course, I love dogs, but also because dogs are much more accessible and so playful. So one of the joys of making the film, you know, was filming the dogs and putting on the doggy cams and just watching them go. But certainly, you know, there are a lot of challenges of making basically a nature film. So it did take a while for this project to basically, you know, get to where it is at this point. But it's been a real pleasure, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank Dieter and Maxine for this whole process. I mean, through it, I've learned so much, and really, you know, have had developed a nice friendship with you. So thank you very much.
It's going to be a long-term one, Yuri. Okay, we're doing many more projects after this.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.